welcome to another episode of the Chaos Chronicles.
Navigating the randomness.
I'm Jess.
I'm Connie.
And
that's Bear.
That is Bear. He is content as can be right now. Today is going to be our part 2 of the Sodder Family case.
Yes. Now, before we get too deep into things, please check us out on all of our social medias. They are linked below in the description. You can find part 1 on all of our social media. And if you click subscribe, you'll be notified for all of our episodes. And I like to think that they are pretty interesting, so you should come check them out. I don't think we'll do a summary for this one, will we?
I mean, so far some weird stuff has happened and there's been a house fire. And 5 children have supposedly perished in said fire.
If you're interested to know more, go back and check out last Wednesday's episode for part 1.
Yeah, because you missed a lot of really odd details.
Yeah, I don't think this is one I can do a summary on.
No, that was as good of a summary as I can put. Yes. Weird stuff happened. Fire happened.
It's suspicious. And it's so suspicious.
Yep. And supposedly 5 children were... Yeah. So that is a good segue to trigger warning, which are child endangerment, disappearance, fire, potential death, potential kidnapping is what I had down for here. Alrighty. So scrolling all the way back down to where we left off here. So I'll go up a couple bullet points here. The death certificates were issued on December 30th for the 5 children that were supposedly in this fire. Local papers would say a whole bunch of different stuff. Some say that they recovered the bodies, which there has been nothing so far that anybody has found. And others have said that only parts of bodies had been recovered. And they had a funeral for the 5 children that was held on January 2nd of 1946, which the parents, George and Jenny, did not attend, but the remaining surviving children did attend.
Minus George, no, whichever one's
Joe.
At the whoa.
Joe.
At the whoa. In the war, World War II.
I didn't even hear it.
Oh, I think as soon as you started saying Joe, my brain went, and whoa. Well, war is woe.
Yeah, it is.
There we go.
But yeah, so minus Joe. So Jenny was having a hard time wrapping her head around the fact that 5 children burnt in this fire supposedly, and there is nothing left of them. And they didn't smell any burning flesh or anything, which is a very strong smell.
Yes. See part 1 for more of our discussion on that.
Yes. So, this is the new stuff here. Jenny started conducting her own experiments. She started burning animal bones to see if the fire would consume them. But
wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, go Jenny.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a mom who's like, no, taking this into my own hands.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you don't hear that a lot, going this far to do experiments, but she's in the right to do it.
Yeah. So she's doing these experiments and she still had the charred bones. She couldn't find a way that got rid of the bones. And she reached out to an employee at the crematorium.
Wait, was that not someone who was consulted in the first jury with the fire?
Apparently not.
Oh, okay. So they consult Suspicious McGee, but okay. Decisions were made.
Decisions were made. And so the employee informed Jenny that the bones would remain after the bodies were burnt for 2 hours at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Do we want to talk about house fire?
Yeah, I was going to say we kind of have to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, and we're specifically looking at houses in the 1940s.
Yes.
So, house fires in the 1940s could reach temperatures up to 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. and their house only burnt for 45 minutes.
So hi folks, let's do some quick math here. Bones to turn to ash per the crematorium employee, who we're going to consider an expert for this because, yeah, they said takes bones to turn to ash 2 hours.
The bones would remain after the bodies were burned for 2 hours at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So they were still there after that heat.
And that's why we double check and we run this back because I can misunderstand things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 2,000 degrees at 2 hours is not enough to burn bones.
Correct.
Based on statistics that are available for 1940 home builds,
Yep.
the estimate is that it burned at about 1,500 degrees.
Correct.
For 45 minutes.
Correct.
Math ain't mathing there. How could 5 children's bodies? They can't. Not at 1,500 degrees. But
according to this expert and what the house temperature could get up to when on fire, no. Yeah.
okay,
I know.
This entire episode can just be called suspicious.
It's very suspicious.
That's suspicious. Very. How did the fire marshal not know that, or the fire chief? Okay.
I don't know. I also don't know how firefighters became firefighters in the 40s.
Good point. This could just be because Bob is 5'10" and the rest of the males in the community are 5'6". So.
Yeah, I don't know how it happened back then. And I don't know, like, now there are national tests and agility tests, and
I don't know for a fact, but based on what we have heard thus far, they didn't even have a manned fire station. So I'm going to assume probably no.
Yeah. I'm leaning more towards not, because also it did say that they didn't have a lot of training either.
Okay, but there's yeah. But now I'm questioning the fire marshal. Go back to part 1 to see more. The fire marshal that was brought out to do further investigating, the presumed expert hired for these investigations specifically to have that knowledge, should have known that there should have been bones. Like that's what's throwing me off. And the fact that they sent it into a jury. Again, it wasn't an actual trial, but apparently it sounds like it was an internal thing to determine it, which is bizarre.
I don't know. That did not make sense to me.
Yeah, because you couldn't have, not a lawyer yet, you couldn't really have an actual jury trial in a state court because the plaintiffs would have to be the Sodders, the homeowners, and they'd have to be bringing it against a known party, which we don't have right now.
Right.
So that it does make it sound like it's an internal, they have their own panel. I don't know. And the fact that on that panel, one of the jurors was the suspicious guy who said that, oh, the wiring's bad, even though the Sodders had just had their electric stove installed and all the electric in the home redone, and the electric company came out and verified that it was good. I'm sorry. There's too many screw ups here from people who should not be screwing up to that level.
Are you ready to add another pile to the fire?
No pun intended. Hell yeah.
Oh, I didn't even do that on purpose.
No.
No.
I know. That's why I'm like, yes.
Oops.
Sorry.
Not intended, but all right. So, continuing, a phone repairman came out to the house and after looking around told the Sodders that their lines were cut and not burned.
Remember that from part 1? Oh.
Another strange fact was that The power was on in the house. The lights were on during the fire. If there was faulty wiring, the lights wouldn't be on.
No, it would have been blown.
Exactly.
Okay, I need whatever documentation, arguments, and transcripts was part of that fire marshal's inquiry and ultimate decision into it being an electrical fire. Like this, I'm sorry, this sounds way too much like it is intentional something, not just bad circumstances.
And this is why this is such a well-known case, because it's just...
How have I not heard of this?
I don't know. I am so surprised you haven't.
Okay.
I was ready for you to be like, as soon as I said it, be like, yeah, let's do it.
How have I... Maybe I haven't heard of it because I've got the Italian-American family, and for a while
Maybe.
I'm sure it's probably like one of those nobody say nothing because you don't know who you're around. You don't want to end up like the Sodders.
That's fair.
And then kids just didn't know about it, and then by the time my generation comes around, we learn about it on a podcast.
Yeah.
This is so I want to see the evidence. Like I want all the documents for this. Like I'm invested.
There's a lot out there.
Oh, good.
There's a lot out there. So yeah. A witness claimed that he saw someone near the house during this time and took a block and tackle that was used to remove car engines.
Okay.
I don't know what block and tackle are, but apparently something used to take car engines out. Nice catch.
Tweak the shit out of my hip to move like that, but
you caught it.
I caught it and turned on the emojis, apparently.
You have emojis?
Yeah, I have an emoji button on. It's like my F1 is for emojis. But like I need to see the evidence on this. And it seems a little suspicious that there was a witness, and what, based on the fact that they have cows and chickens and the amount of space that cows take, I'm assuming that they have a decent amount of yardage.
I'm assuming the same. I don't know the exact amount though.
Just a reasonable inference based on the cows. Chickens you can have in a small space.
Yeah, they're 2 miles from town.
2 miles from town. Okay. So I'm imagining a small town like what my mom grew up in.
Probably something similar.
That makes it even more odd that there's a witness for these events. Wait, depends on when he saw this person. Because originally it would have been around maybe about 10:30-ish, because that was when Jenny came downstairs, saw that the lights were on, thought that...
12.
No, it was at 12. Sorry, right. She went upstairs at 10.
Yeah.
She went upstairs at 10, and that's the last... We have a known sighting of these 5 children that supposedly died in the fire.
Yep.
And then she came back down at 12 because the lights were on and the curtains weren't closed. Now,
Well, she had the phone call, and that's what made her go downstairs.
Oh, yes.
And then she noticed that and then went back upstairs.
Yes. Okay. So, that leads in. So phone lines were working as of 12 a.m.
Correct.
Okay. So now what I want to know is where this witness was, because it seems odd that they would be out on Christmas morning, technically
Christmas morning,
around like 12 or 1 a.m. Assuming probably a little bit before 1, because 1 is when she heard something on the roof, and then 1:30 is when she awoke to the fire, correct?
I am going back. So 12:30 was when the phone rang and Jenny went downstairs. And then 1 a.m. was Jenny being woken up by the loud bang, followed by a rolling noise hitting the roof. And then 1:30, she smelled the smoke.
Yes. I'm wondering, not victim blaming, but I'm very curious that she didn't investigate. I don't know.
I mean, when nothing else came of it, she just went back to sleep.
Valid. I suppose it's because, 1, because of this podcast, 2, because of how I was raised, 3, the day and age that we're in. If I hear anything relatively suspicious, my butt is up and investigating. Like, I don't care how little sleep I'm going to get. I'm not falling back asleep until I know for a fact that something's not about.
Yeah. But also, I don't know, older houses, sometimes stuff happens, or like up here, pine cones hitting your roof or whatever and then rolling off. I don't know how loud this was, but like,
True. When I think bang, I think more than
really
a bump. Like old homes to me, the noises they make, having lived in one myself, it's more bumps and creaks, not bangs. Bangs
fair.
is a physical intervention of something outside.
That is fair.
Yeah. And anyway, I'm just getting to this point. I'm not shaming Jenny. Dear God, no. No. But again, because I don't know. There's just something about this timeline. There's something in there that I know that's important, and I'm trying to grasp where it is. But the witness timing seems odd.
But also, the holidays back in the 40s, and I mean, there was also a Christmas party. Remember the phone call at 12:30?
Was it a witness from the Christmas party?
I don't know.
But they could have been coming home.
Someone called, and she heard like a lot of people, and Jenny heard a lot of people in the background and like clinking of glasses. So maybe there was a big party going on, and then someone was going home.
That does seem. The phone call is also weird because I mean, like, wrong numbers can happen all the time. But my understanding of party lines back then, limited understanding.
Yeah, we really don't understand it that well.
No, but my understanding of party lines is you'd pick up, it would connect to the operator because most places at the time, again, given my understanding, you didn't have a direct number to call someone per se.
I don't know when that switched over.
It was sometime at least in the later part of the 50s. But like my knowledge of that is like you have to ask for a specific extension, or you say like the Johnson's home, the Sodder's home.
Yeah.
Like it just seems, I don't know. It seems weird. It seems suspicious. A lot of this is seeming suspicious here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe I could excuse the fire marshal inquiry thing if that suspicious person wasn't on the jury, and the fact that the crematorium employee is saying, like, even at 2,000 degrees for 2 hours, bones will remain.
But they didn't talk to her. Jenny just talked to her.
They just talked, but the fire marshal team should know that.
I'm aware, but
I know, and it's really because it's so many of these coincidences, which now we know phone lines were cut, which we said was a coincidence before. No, not a coincidence. It seemed intentional.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is just adding up too much. Like it's too much to be just bad luck.
Yes.
Or incompetency potentially. I don't know. It's something's here. I'm not quite getting it. For all this
to be an accidental fire is just,
it's too much. That's asking us to believe way too much.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel plausible.
No. So they did find the man that was around the cars.
Okay.
And
for those who don't remember, in part 1, remember the ladder was moved to get to the attic when George was trying to get to what he believed was his children in the attic. And so he went to go move his cars so he could try to climb up. And both cars that have been working just fine during the day all of a sudden didn't start.
So that guy pled guilty to stealing the items of the Sodders, but denied any involvement in the fire. So he stole items to take out car engines.
Okay.
And he pled guilty to that.
Okay.
But denied everything else.
That's asking for us to believe a lot. Like you as the car thief that pled guilty, and he was sentenced, right?
All it said was, so he pled guilty to taking a block and tackle that was used to remove car engines. It did not say anything about him doing anything to the cars. It did not say anything about blah, blah, blah. But all it said was he pled guilty to stealing those items and denied any involvement in the fire. So
assuming he pled guilty to that, we're assuming that he was charged or convicted with at least theft. So I can say theft here. Like that's an established fact. It's not defamation. Yes. So that this convicted now thief of those parts, like that's just asking us a lot to believe of like you just happened to choose this night when all this was going down around relatively the same time, give or take.
I wish I could find more records about this guy. I couldn't even find his name. I don't know who he was. I couldn't find anything about like interviews with him or anything, but I would love to be able to see like what questions they asked him and that,
Yeah.
because I feel like there's just a lot missing that we will never know about this guy.
Yeah, no, it just, you know, tying it back to all the stuff I've had to study, there's a big thing in law, not a lawyer, not a professor. Don't take this as legal education in any way, but there's a big thing in law where it's basically called your plausibility standard. When you are making a complaint, which is what the plaintiff brings, so when you're suing somebody, the courts in Iqbal and Twombly have set out a plausibility standard that your complaint, in essence, you look at the complaint and you strip away all legal conclusions. So saying like, oh, he negligently did this or blah, blah. Negligently is a legal conclusion. You take it out. And you look at the remaining facts. What is there? And you have to look and see, is this case good on its face? Are these facts plausible? Not just possible, but plausible.
Yeah.
And so when I'm hearing all these facts and I'm applying this plausibility standard, I'm like taking away even the conclusion of being, the convicted of the theft. This is a lot to try to say that it was plausible that it was just an accidental fire. Like this is too much to ask someone to do.
It's a lot.
And also I am proud of myself for knowing that. And I studied the plausibility standard and was it on my exam today? No. Or it was and I totally missed those points. But like, okay. This podcast is going to get real interesting when I take my evidentiary course.
Yeah.
Not until next year, though. They don't give it to first years, which
is going to get interesting with every class you take. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a little side note there, but like, this is they're asking for too much.
It's a lot. There's a lot going on in this case here. So another witness claimed to be passing the house late Christmas Eve and had seen people throwing, quote, balls of fire, end quote, at the house.
That's a very important witness testimony, if true.
Yeah, I don't know.
Balls of fire. Molotov cocktails.
That's where my head went, too. But, so after the house was burnt down, there were parents and George, Jenny, and Sylvia were out walking around. Sylvia found a dark green, rubberish, circular object in the yard, and Jenny then recalled the loud noise and then something rolling on the roof. What was left of it, George believed it was a napalm or a pineapple bomb, which is a hand grenade.
Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't saying napalm to correct you. I mean, like, yes, correct. But like, I'm shocked that the napalm.
Yeah.
I
know that. I feel like that would be a lot louder than a little bang.
Napalm, the chemical, though, highly, highly flammable. Not my understanding. My understanding of it is it's similar, like, to Agent Orange from Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of.
You were thinking like grenade. Yeah,
I was thinking of grenade.
Yeah, it's, to my understanding, not an expert. It's the chemical agent itself. So like it can be part of grenades because it gives it more of that explosive factor. Mm-hmm. But it's really just kind of in that same category like C4 where it's the explosive element.
That would fit more then because I was very confused by that.
Yeah, and then pineapple, that one's an actual,
actual hand grenade.
Yeah. But that was very common in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I wonder if anyone... Well, this was East Coast, so like maybe there was a proximity to an armory or any like stations for shipment or otherwise to troops. But I'm like, did maybe someone come home were they granted a break, which, I mean, unlikely but not unheard of, and they just happened to grab some souvenirs on their way home from base camp. That does bring him back. If napalm was used, there's implications with that. That does tie it back, though, to George being outspoken against Mussolini.
Mm-hmm. Yep, people weren't happy with George either. So.
No, but you can be not happy with someone murdering their children and or kidnapping their children. No, there are steps before that. Those even aren't. It's not steps before that. That shouldn't happen. Like that should never be an option.
Mm-hmm. So, in 1947, George and Jenny sent a letter to the FBI about this case.
Good.
And they responded, quote, "Although I would like to be of service, the matter related appears to be of local character and does not come within the investigative jurisdiction of the Bureau." End quote. The agents later went to say they would assist if they got permission from Fayetteville PD and Fire, but they declined. Mm-hmm. Later on, a report came in from a woman claiming that she saw the missing children in a passing car while the fire was happening. And then a woman working at a tourist stop told police the morning after the fire, and this was years ago, and then she saw the photos. Morning after the fire, about 50 miles northwest of the Sodders, she said that she served them all breakfast, and there was a Florida license plate in the parking lot.
No, I do think I know a bit about this
part?
case. I think Bailey Sarian had a Dark History episode on it.
I would be surprised if she didn't.
Yep. No, I think I'm recognizing this part now.
So the Sodders hired a PI named C.C. Tinsley, who heard about an interesting story regarding Morris, the fire chief. Morris had claimed that there were no remains found, but had told someone else that he discovered a human organ in the ashes and he had hid it in a box and buried it at the scene.
No, it was a BuzzFeed Unsolved episode. I remember hearing. Yeah. Also, okay, so let me get this straight. He's saying like, oh, it was so hot that it burned the bones, but an organ, a meaty thing, gross myself out. A meaty thing didn't burn.
Mm-hmm. Just a singular random organ.
And he just kept it?
He put it in a box and buried it at the scene?
Okay, Edgar Allan Poe. No. Thump at your conscience. Okay.
So the Sodders went and found the box. They found the box and they took it straight to a local funeral director.
Interesting. They didn't. Well, at this point, I'm sure they're not fully trusting in the police and fire.
Yeah. I'm also wondering if back then, I know a lot of things crossed over, a lot of jobs crossed over. I wondered if that was like the medical examiner.
Probably. If they have a volunteer fire department, I'm assuming there's probably not a separate medical examiner.
No.
Yeah.
That's my assumption. Yeah. And I'm just assuming. I don't know. But so the funeral director looked at it and they concluded that it was beef liver and was never touched by fire.
Yeah. Who saw that coming? All of us. I can't.
Yeah. So the Sodders then heard another rumor soon after about Morris telling others that what was in the box was never in the fire, but he buried the beef liver in the rubble, hoping that if any remains were found, this would be enough to stop the investigation.
Wait, hold on. I gotta clarify on this.
I'll do my best.
Okay. So he's saying, and the Sodders found the box buried in the rubble?
It was buried in the rubble.
In a box.
In a box.
Morrison's the police chief?
Mm-hmm. So, no, fire chief.
Fire chief.
I know it doesn't
What?
make sense. I know it is so, I don't even know how that would make any sense. If anything, if it's in a box, that means that someone cut it out and put it in the box.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, a human body, when it gets burned, it's not going to leave a random liver.
In a box.
No.
I don't. I, oh, I think we might just have to move on from that one because I can't even.
It's just way out
What?
there. Yeah, it's out there.
Okay. That's like putting bologna on vanilla ice cream. Makes no sense.
Yeah. So John, who is the oldest of the children, told the media that he theorized that the fire marshal was either paid off or just didn't push anything.
Oh, is suspicious. Yeah.
Yeah. The family believed that something was off.
My big toe believes something's off, and it doesn't have a high IQ. So yeah.
A theory is that the fire was arson to cover up an abduction of 5 children who had been taken by the Italian mafia or were victims of human trafficking.
Yeah. That's about the most plausible thing that has come out of this entire case, both parts 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. Over the years, following the fire tips and leads, they just keep coming. George saw a newspaper picture of school children in New York years later, and he was convinced that one of the girls in the photos was Betty, one of the missing children. He drove all the way to New York City, but her parents refused to let him speak to her, which I can see.
Was it actually her parents, like bio parents,
I
adopted?
don't
We
know.
don't know.
We don't know.
And DNA testing wasn't a thing back then. Because I'm thinking, like, oh, if this had happened today, it would have been like, oh, 23andMe that. Not
Yeah.
even, like, we have so many options.
Yeah. But back then they didn't.
What's that phrase? I'm about to butcher this. Work with me here. The real tragedy of Shakespeare's plays is not so much the tragedy that occurs within the plays, but the fact that the characters are in them. Where if you had put I can't say his name. Basically, if you take the characters from Macbeth, you put them in Romeo and Juliet, they would have figured out all of that. You put Romeo and Juliet inside of Macbeth, they would have figured out a way something else.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just the setting is what is the true tragedy.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about a lot of these cases that we do, especially these older ones where, like the Black Dahlia being a great example.
Yeah.
This one here too, if these cases were to happen today, the amount of resources that we have that can make this so it's not an unsolved, but the true tragedy is that we have no way to retroactively apply some of this. Like some of the evidence is just lost to time.
Yep.
And so it's one of those frustrating things where, like, that's obviously the tragedy here is the tragedy, but like this is another part of that tragedy.
Yeah.
Also, I'm just realizing I don't know my Shakespeare plays well.
I don't either. In 1949, the Sodders brought, so 4 years after the 4 years after the fire. Couldn't do simple math.
Wait,
there.
fire was in 45, right?
45.
Yeah, 44.
Yeah, probably 3.5 to 4 years.
Yes. Whew, math.
Yeah. So 3.5 to 4 years later, in 1949, the Sodders brought in pathologist Oscar B. Hunter from Washington, D.C. He conducted a new search and did a thorough excavation. He was able to uncover several small objects, one of which were several shards of vertebrae. Your backbone.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but like, where was that before?
They're little
Yeah, but I'm just
shards.
I'm questioning where they would have come from, because if vertebrae is there, in theory, more bones should be there that are much more noticeable.
Like a femur?
Yeah, like I feel like pretty much any other. Well, isn't femur the strongest bone on the human body?
The biggest.
Yeah,
I think it's the strongest. It's the longest.
yeah. I don't know. This feels This feels weird.
So Oscar sent in the bones to the Smithsonian Institute, and they gave the following report. Quote, the human bones consist of 4 lumbar vertebrae belonging to one individual. Since the transverse recesses are fused, the age of this individual at death should have been 16 or 17 years. The top limit of age should be 22, since the centra, which is normally fused at 23, are still unfused. On this basis, the bones show greater skeletal maturation than one would expect for a 14-year-old boy, who is the oldest of the missing Sodder children. It is, however, possible, although not probable, for a boy 14 and a half years to show age 16 or 17 maturation. End quote.
So they're touching on what I was touching on about the, possible and plausibility. So they're like, it could happen, but
probably not.
Yeah.
So even with this, the vertebrae didn't have any indication that it was exposed to any fire, and no other bones were found in the excavation.
It's the liver in the box all over again.
Yeah. The Smithsonian scholar stated, quote, one would expect to find the full skeletons of the 5 children rather than only 4 vertebrae, end quote.
I'm glad the Smithsonian and I are on the same page.
Same.
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
What? So where did that... He did bulldoze over the land. So like maybe there was native land, something's fishy, like there's any way that a couple of those little bone shards could have gotten there.
It's funny that you're saying what you're saying, because the report concludes that the bones most likely had been in the supply of dirt that George had used to fill the basement when he was creating the memorial for his children.
I shouldn't celebrate right now. I was right. I like being right. But it's very, very sad. Sorry.
Once the state closed the case officially in 1950, the FBI took up the case since it was a possible interstate kidnapping. But
they have jurisdiction.
They do, but they ended up dropping the case after 2 years. The Sodder family didn't give up hope, though.
Good.
They printed flyers with photos of their children and offered initially a $5,000 reward, which is about $65,490 today. But they soon doubled it for information that would have settled the case for even just one of their children.
Yeah, well, they're desperate to get their children back.
Yep. In 1952, they put up a billboard at the site of the house, another along Route 60 with the same information. Shortly after the billboards went up, a woman who worked at a Charleston hotel saw the children's photos and recalled seeing them 4 to 5 weeks after the fire. Mind you, this is 7 years later.
And so I'm just wondering, like, is there something that made this hotel person remember the children? But like, that just seems really weird that she comes forward and she's like, I remember it.
Well, let's talk about it.
Oh, yay. We like that.
So the children were with 2 women and 2 men, and they were Italian. The whole party stayed in a large room with several beds and had checked in around midnight. The woman tried to talk to the children, but the men would not allow it.
Okay, that's making some sense why she'd remember that.
One man looked hostile and then turned talking rapid Italian to everyone in the party, and everyone abruptly stopped talking.
Okay, this is memorable.
They then left the next morning.
Okay, this is very memorable.
But the investigators didn't consider her story to be credible enough.
Really?
Supposedly.
But they were going to go off a freaking beef liver in a box? Okay. Choices made. Also, side note, just want to add to, in the 40s, it is to add credibility to her. I don't know if it's credible or not. I'm just someone on a podcast. in the 40s, this is from my own background knowledge, because of Italy's involvement, there was definitely prejudice against Italians, and there were certain racial terms that came with it as well, which I'm not going to say because I never know what's going to get us flagged.
Yep.
Let's just say that Cardi B's WAP song was very shocking to be heard.
Yeah, so many tips came in about sightings of the Sodder children, and George would go and follow up in person with them.
Oh.
One tip came out in 1967. A woman wrote to the family saying that Lewis revealed his identity to her after having too much to drink one night and believed he and Maurice were both living in Texas somewhere. The police helped them find the two men, but the men denied being the missing sons. And this is again before DNA. Later the same year, the Sodders received another letter, and this was what the Sodders believed to be the most credible evidence that Lewis at least was still alive. There was no return address, and it had been postmarked Central City, Kentucky. Inside, there was a photo of a man around 30 and had features that resembled Lewis. At this time, Lewis would have been in his 30s if he did, in fact, survive the fire. On the back of the photo, it wrote, Lewis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, little boys, A90132 or 35. They couldn't decipher that. The Sodders hired another PI to go to Central City, and so they could go and look into this, but he never reported back to the Sodders, and they weren't able to locate him.
Oh, so either he was fraudulent, took their money and ran, or he found something.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
The picture, though, gave them hope that he was alive. Around the same time, George told the media it's, quote, like hitting a rock wall. We can't go any further. Time is running out for us, but we only want to know. If they did die in that fire, we want to be convinced. Otherwise, we want to know what happened to them, end quote. George did pass away in 1969. Jenny and her surviving children, except John, continued to seek answers to their questions. The rest of her life, Jenny stayed in the family home and wore black in mourning for the rest of her life and tended to the memorial garden. She passed away in 1989, and the family finally took down the weathered, worn billboards. The surviving Sodder children and their own children continued to publicize the case and would continue to investigate leads. Some theorized that the, you might be able to pronounce this better than me, Sicilian mafia. There we go.
Yeah, which, side note, Sicilian mafia, bad. I mean, not that there's a good mafia, but like...
Real bad?
Yes.
Real bad.
Yeah, Sicily is the little island off the boot of Italy.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like Sicilian...
So bad.
Yeah. I'm not, again, there's not a good mafia, but like Sicilian mafia is like, you don't...
So some theorized that they were trying to extort money from George, and the children may have been taken. They may have had a plan about arson and told the children that they would be safe if they left the house. So that's one theory, but another theory that continues is that they could have been taken back to Italy too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's kind of the curse of this, is that there's so much unknown, so many possibilities of it.
There's so many possibilities for these children. But if the children did survive and knew their family survived the fire, they could have avoided making contact with them out of potential harm.
Well, yeah, because if it is the Sicilian mafia, like, you don't know who's in that.
Exactly.
And I'm surprised. Yeah, I am curious how the children got out of the house. Although it sounds like, based on the fact that the curtains weren't drawn and the lights were on, maybe they were lured out. But I'm just imagine, because what were the ages of the children that were taken again? The oldest one being 14.
I apologize for not saying this until now, but the 5 missing Sodder children, Maurice, age 14, Martha, age 12, Lewis, age 10, Jenny, age 8, and Betty, age 5.
Okay. I mean, they're young enough that I can see, maybe being able to control them a lot better, especially if we go off of the hotel tip and, assuming that there was 4 adults as part of this, which 2 women being there could explain the call or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And maybe that call was a taunting thing to try to get them to notice that the kids weren't there. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But that would, make him comply a lot easier, getting him out of the house and then telling them, like, oh, we burned your family house down, and like whatever horrible things they said, like the kids are probably more likely to believe it. So that would
Mm-hmm.
explain maybe why they don't seek them out after that.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're told, like, even if someone did survive, like, we'll come back and kill you. Like, they're young enough to be impressionable to have
Yeah.
that, like, fear. Even if that fear of someone coming back is maybe irrational,
Yeah.
they're not at the age to process that. And
Mm-mm.
even as an adult, because that was imprinted so young, that would be so hard to overcome.
Exactly.
Which would I don't
Yeah.
that theory is explaining a lot more.
Yeah. The youngest of the surviving Sodder children was Sylvia, and she died in 2021.
Oh, she was a 3-year-old, right?
Yeah.
2020, so recent.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Really recent. She had stated the fire was one of her earliest memories, and she believed that her siblings survived that night. She assisted with publicizing the case, and in 2006, Sylvia's daughter, Jenny,
Hmm.
who told the media, quote, "She promised my grandparents she wouldn't let the story die, that she would do everything she could," end quote. Jenny then talked about how her mother was like an only child after the fire, since most of the surviving children were so much older than her.
Yeah.
Yep. Jenny believes it to be unlikely for her family to ever get closure. Quote, "Anybody who knew what happened would have been my grandparents' age. I would think that it's been public enough that if the children wanted to be found later on in life, then they would have reached out." End quote. And that is what I have for this episode. My sources came from Smithsonian Magazine, the John Travolta Medium, and Roots Web, and the New York Times.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, obviously it's such a big tragedy, but again, drawing the parallels, we talked about this on the break, but like my Italian side of my family has a now 101-year long tradition of mass that started because my great uncle, so my grandfather's brother, was killed on Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just for the rest of my great grandparents' lives, they were very similar to Jenny,
Yeah.
where, like, according to the family lore, a hearse passed by my great grandparents' house, and they didn't know that Dan had died, but apparently my grandfather's hands started shaking, and on his deathbed, his hands still shook, like they
Oh
shook the
my
rest of his
gosh.
life.
Wow.
And so I'm drawing these parallels between the intimate personal details that I've heard of my family experiencing that grief, and now imagining what this family did, where, I mean, Sylvie, she was 3. She doesn't have that. She probably doesn't have those memories of like the happy family and everyone together.
Mm-hmm.
So the only life that she knew was her mother in mourning and her
Mm-hmm.
father in mourning,
Yep.
and like searching for this family.
Yep.
So it's obviously the whole thing's sad, but I'm really feeling for poor Sylvie. I mean, for all of them, but just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. But, you know, then we circle back because we have to have some silver lining on everything. We've talked about it in other episodes. You know, we'd like to believe that when you die and you get to the other side, that's where you have answers. You know, if there's a heaven waiting, it's nice that the entire family is together.
Exactly. Yep. I do like thinking about that because, I mean, Sylvia was the youngest and she passed away. I believe she was in her 80s when she passed away. And she was the youngest, meaning that the odds of any of the other Sodder children to be alive today is very, very slim. Is it possible? Yes. They could be in their 90s right now, upper 90s.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's improbable.
Not likely. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
No. And we're going to hold on to the happier thought of family got to be reunited.
Yes, I will. I do like ending on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was the Sodder family case.
Yeah, there was no way this was a one-parter.
No, I told Connie in the very beginning, I'm like, there is a small chance we can do it in one. I don't think it's possible, but we'll play by ear. I was right.
You were very right. Yes. No, this one, wow. Well, it's one of those where it would be amazing, again, to have answers on it. It'd be amazing if investigative resources could be rededicated to this, to providing answers, but
there's nothing left. The house burnt down.
Everyone's gone.
Everyone's gone.
This is just another one of those tragedies lost to time.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But we learned something. No, we didn't.
Well, it was an interesting case to go over. Yes. A lot of crazy stuff happened.
Yes.
So, and it's one of those big mysteries.
Yeah, we've had a handful of those. Mm-hmm. We like to do the ones where we have a conclusive ending, but
every once in a while we got to go back to who knows.
Yeah, I feel like our conclusive ones are few and far between now.
Yeah, I know. Can you tell I like the ones that are unsolved?
Just as like, that's my niche. And I'm sitting over here foaming at the mouth like, who do we charge? Who do we convict? It's fine.
Every once in a while I have to throw one in for Connie to be like, here's your ending for you.
I'm like, give me the procedural. I can feel comfort in my knowledge of the procedural.
Yeah. Well.
But we have control issues.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I figured if I was going to do it at any time of the year, it would be in December. And we got our 2-parter. And then next week we have a special Christmas episode for you guys.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on this. Any last thoughts before we wrap her up?
It was a strange one.
It was a strange one. Yeah.
It was a strange one.
You know, this one is giving me Dyatlov Pass vibes.
Same.
Yep. We still have yet to, remake or do a part 2 on that one.
We will remake it because we were a little tangenty, a little rambly, more than normal.
Well, it was in our first 10 episodes, wasn't it?
It was. And it was also with our old mics.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. So we will definitely redo that one.
But if you want to check it out, you should. The content, to my memory, it's fun. We have fun with it. That was our first episode that had its own little viral, not really viral moment.
Yeah. Viral for our standards.
For our standards. It was like, oh my God, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. You can catch us on Saturdays for our book reviews. Right now we are reviewing Eclipse. It is just as bad as you remember it. Actually worse.
Probably worse.
Worse. So much worse. But you should tune in with us. A lot more lighthearted there. Otherwise, we will continue with our Who Knows What Wednesday episodes, usually true crime or mystery. Jess has got those sorted into wonderful playlists on our YouTube. So you should definitely check those out.
Yes.
Anything else?
Until next time.
Adios.
Bye.